She is founder of Erin Consultancy. I've been following her on LinkedIn for a while, and she's quite active in the AEC tech community. She recently spoke at AEC Plus Tech event, and I was like, I have to get her on the show because she has so much to share. So thanks a lot for your time to do this.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me on. Super happy to be here.
Okay, so Erin, uh, can you share us and walk us through like your top three career highlights till date?
Gosh, well, I guess I can start probably at the beginning. So my background, I studied civil engineering at USC, but the first project I was on as a project engineer is, I would say, one of the highlights of my career because that's really where I got a foothold in the construction industry to begin with, and obviously learned a ton as a fresh engineer right into the industry. So that was as a project engineer, senior PE with Morley Builders, a local general contractor here in Southern California, working on renovating one of the buildings on campus, which was USC Heritage Hall. So it's the building that has all the Heisman trophies and the sports memorabilia, and it was just really really cool being able to do that. One as a student, like attending the school at the same time, but two also as like a new, I guess, professional in the industry. So yeah, it was a really cool way to give back. It also, I think, was pretty career defining because it was where I first started doing the whole, tech improvement processes and all of the good stuff that comes with digitization and digitalization. So one of the big focuses, at least that, was available to me in my role as, pretty much doing dot control from the start, was getting digitized with drawing sets and using Bluebeam and making, the drawings and information accessible through an iPad in the field instead of having to run back and forth. So that was really a transformative perspective to see, okay, well, if I do this thing on the computer, it can actually like seriously improve some efficiencies and things that we see out in the field. So that was really cool from the first, I guess, start of my career there. So yeah, so that's the first one. And I think you said three total,
Yeah.
right? So let's see. Two more. Gosh. So definitely, I would be remiss if I did not share just how fantastic the Suffolk Construction Solutions team was with my experience there. So, for some background, for those who don't know, Suffolk is a national general contractor. They have what first started out as called smart labs. Um, which are these tech and innovation hubs in each major office, which I had the privilege of running as a regional director and then later on as a national director. But that was just such an incredible experience because I got to focus on the tech and innovation stuff pretty much day in and day out, which is what was in is my passion. So that was really incredible, just to be able to focus on that work. And then the other piece of it, which just as amazing, is just having other like-minded colleagues on the same team, where we really made like a cohesive unit together, just kind of running this tech and innovation stuff. Yeah, together. So I really loved that teamwork aspect of it. Learned a ton, surrounded by super smart, passionate people as well. So that was a really, really good experience. And then Suffolk, of course, is I would say an industry leader in a lot of things. So they have like their venture capital arm. They're a whole other slew of initiatives that they're always kind of pushing forward. So that definitely expanded my horizons with being a professional in construction. So super grateful for that. Um, and then let's see, the third, which is kind of ironic, but would be when I left Suffolk to start EKC for my career. So I kind of still wanted to do more in the industry. I wanted to change from big corporate to small boutique business. So that's what I did, which was kind of really scary, but also super rewarding. We're probably going to talk a little bit more about what I do with EKC, but that was definitely I would say the third career highlight, if you will.
Mm. And like, it's very rare to have and meet people with this kind of path of technology adoption. It's a small group in
Mm.
the industry with that passion for technology. So are there any particular incident you could recall that were like pivotal in your tech journey?
Um, Nothing really specific. It's kind of interesting, but I think a lot of us who end up in these tech and innovation roles, it's largely because it's just who we are as
Mm.
people in a way. So, sometimes it comes down to, yeah, I'm, like, way too lazy to do this process super manually, takes forever. Like, no, I want it to go quick and efficient, smooth, safe, and, be able to go home at a reasonable hour at the end of the day. So, super motivated to find those efficiencies. And I think especially with like I'll say the millennial generation, we grew up um, without the internet and then with the internet. So we've seen this huge transformation. So for me, at least, it felt pretty natural to see, oh, hey, here's all these manual processes. Here's the tech. Let's connect the two and kind of, you know, uh, I guess, yeah, get the process innovation moving forward. So yeah, like wanting to be more efficient, I think an innate desire to just help and improve.
Mm.
So I think it comes down to what a lot of engineers have naturally, which is the desire to solve problems and kind of make things better, right? So if I see something that's not working quite as good and I have a concept of how it could potentially work and like implement a new structure or something, like, yeah, like I think I'm an engineer at heart. Like I want to solve that problem and kind of share that for, the benefit of the group. So, um, yeah, not one moment, but I think it's a series of, small moments that kind of built up to say, okay, oh, actually, this construction tech thing actually matches like who I am inside. So, yeah.
That's nice. In for the young Erin who is who might be studying at USC civil
Mm.
engineering, how can she prepare for this role? What are the skills she
Yeah.
has to learn?
Yeah. And I guess this is geared towards like any students really that are in the audience, but for me, like when I first started, there really wasn't any sort of career path that was defined at all. And in many cases, there still is not a clear career path to construction tech stuff. I think the fact that like the names of the roles vary so much is indicative of, I guess, the lack of standardization or formal role in the industry. But we're getting there slowly, I think. But for I would say like you're still in school or maybe just out of school engineer, it's really just looking for opportunities to improve and help your team, and no matter how small, right? So I think that's what gets overlooked probably from a student perspective. So you don't need to change the world. You don't need to do something like super massive, but something that's really really small can make a huge change. And making sure that you're documenting that and sharing it with the right people is huge. The other thing too that it I got this advice myself as well, and I would share it again, is to just ask a lot of questions. So there's no better opportunity to learn than, of course, like when you're a student or maybe in an internship or something. But the more you ask questions, like the earlier you are, like it it will just make things so much easier later down the road. And really asking and understanding the fundamentals is extremely helpful. So we a lot of times in constructions for like safety, for example, we'll say like, well, let's ask why 5 times to find the root cause of something. So why did this happen? Why did that happen? Why? So have that curiosity, and hold on to that, because getting that massive amount of learning as you're coming in pays off dividends later on.
Interesting. Because like sometimes it could be tricky to have the bureaucracy when you are trying to experiment
Mm,
with tools and you have to take along with the team.
yeah.
So how can you be but the champion but also sound as a supportive person?
Yeah, that's a big topic. So there's a whole method to the madness of like getting buy-in, finding the right stakeholders, putting together the right materials to get that buy-in, making sure there aren't any surprises. But I think it comes back to, again, like start small,
Mm,
start with some low-hanging fruit that's, not going to ruffle too many feathers, but still be transformative. So,
I see.
yeah.
Was there any moment in your career you felt a bit overwhelming or like felt you're the only person in the room and you had challenges?
Oh man, like all of it. Yeah, so it's no secret. I'm you know, a small brown woman on a construction job site, usually the only woman on the job site, which has been changing, which is great. But yeah, when I first started out, definitely an only. I think in construction tech too, it's also a little difficult in many instances, like being on a panel or speaking at a conference, being like, okay, well, I'm the only one. Here, but there are some good things going on to help change that. But yeah, the overwhelm. Gosh, I think maybe I've just gotten used to it, so it's like normal at this point. So I don't quite question anything really. Like, oh yeah, no, I'm supposed to be here. Like
Mm,
it's just been my normal at this point. So yeah, there's probably more if I, like, have some time to reflect that I could unpack there, but, um, yeah, I think it just kind of became natural for me to be
mm,
comfortable with discomfort in a way, and that also, this kinda goes back to one of your earlier questions, is why I think, innovation and making change is also something that's kind of natural for me. So,
mm.
if, you're already not the normal person in the room and you're exploring all these new things, it's just another thing that's, not normal, but is my normal, so just comes a bit naturally. Yeah.
I see. Like I I would like to know during the times you felt like how did you keep yourself motivated? Because I'm
Mm.
asking there could be other brown girls in construction and
Yeah.
not everyone might have the same persistence or perseverance to continue that path. So what could be a good support system for them to keep going and be encouraging?
Yeah, let's see. So, you just have to ignore some things at some point and just move on. So, some things are worth your time and attention, other things are not. So, if it's negative, if it's toxic, if it's bringing you down, don't focus on it. Focus on the positive stuff. And there are resources out there too. So, I do think the industry is improving. So there are a lot of mentorship programs, like other colleagues too, that will probably be open to sharing, hopefully, with tips and tricks that help them through their career or through specific things in their company. And I'll also throw out there as well, like there are a bunch of like women in construction organizations, or the many different groups that are there to support. So one that I'm a part of is Women in Construction Tech, which I think is so cool that there's something really specific for women in construction tech. So we're a global group that's comprised of women in construction tech that's aimed to have a community where we support each other in our professional development. So that's at least one group that's out there. And then there are other great groups as well. So I think when I first started out, there was like NAWIC, National Association of Women in Construction, as well as YOPS, women in construction operations. So there's more. There's more. There's like women in BIM. There's a bunch of these groups out there. So explore, reach out. Don't be shy, because I feel like a lot of individuals earlier on in their career are maybe shy about reaching out. But don't be. The worst somebody could just say is no, and then you move on. So um, yeah. What else can I share? Yeah, I always come back to ask questions,
Mm,
which kind of goes for anybody, right? So, yeah, just have that, that learning cap on.
I see. And at Suffolk, can you share how a day or a week in your life looks like?
Oh, yeah. Day or week in my life. So let's see. Gosh, I kind of live and die by my calendar. So I pretty much have everything blocked out on there. So what it looks like is maybe doing some early calls. So I have some contacts or projects that may be happening in a completely different time zone than mine. So sometimes it's maybe an early call, not too early, but right at the start of the day, catching up on some maybe like product development. Then I'll get through like emails and sit down and do some like deep work on some big project stuff that's going on. Um, break for lunch and then come back, catch up on some more project work, that sort of thing. A lot of times throughout my week, I'll have some short meet and greet calls because I do connect with a lot of different construction technology startups.
Mm,
So that's always a highlight, is learning about new solutions that are out there. And then I may or may not have some sort of a speaking engagement like this one, or going to a conference to speak, or running my own webinar series. So I have a monthly webinar where I host a solution typically, and a couple other guests just to talk about a topic in construction tech. So, yeah, those are the things that come up day to day. I think the other piece of it as well, which is not as cool, is the running the business side of things. So, like looking into insurance or reading contracts and verifying, legalese stuff, and making sure all the finances are in order and sending invoices and stuff. So, right now it's pretty much just me. I do have some help with some day-to-day stuff, but yeah, wearing a lot of hats these days. But yeah,
I see.
that's kind of what it looks like.
It's amazing. And the reason I ask is like for that skills, like sometimes some people have like domain knowledge which helps them what are the automation needs or requirements, and
Mm.
then when they're exploring and talking to various startups, then they start connecting the dots. Okay, this could be an interesting application, or whether this should be developed in-house. So it like your experience builds that intuition. Oh, this could be a really good experience. And if you
Mhm.
hadn't started EKC, what would be a typical career path look like for person who is interested in construction tech? Like, what are the
Yeah.
ladders?
So, um, Let's see. So what does the typical construction path look like, or career path look like? So I think it's slightly different for some, kind of depending on the company's organizational structure too. But what I've noticed, and this actually was not my experience, but what I've noticed is that a lot of times, what happens is that the construction technology and innovation roles will come out of the VDC, so the virtual design
Mm,
coordination departments, because they're already doing a lot with technology and like 3D modeling, and it's kind of at that natural next step. So for many companies, it might be the case where if you're aspiring to go the construction technology route, it might make sense to get involved with that BDC group, kind of get a handle on some of those technologies that they're using, and potentially use that to grow or move on to another role that's adjacent to VDC, but maybe focusing more on like broad innovation for the company. So that's maybe one way. I think another way that I've seen, which is my personal experience, is to first get the construction field experience. So I spent about 6 years or so doing historical renovation projects at my first company. So that was fantastic with learning all the ins and outs of what goes on a construction site and what you do on the GC side, at least, to help manage that process. So that is kind of where you get that foundational level. And then for myself, I also saw data as
mm,
uh, really important to the industry. So I did a short certificate program online to help explore data and business analytics. So nowadays, especially with just how much stuff is available online, that is another, I guess, point of advice to anyone that's thinking of like pivoting into more of a tech role. So you can look to get more formal education that will help you, sharpen those skills, if you will. And yeah, I think, it having a track record too of, like, trying some of those basic processes and showing, "Okay, this, like, really helped improve one project," kind of made a case to say, "Okay, like, we actually need a process innovation role." So, it just kind of naturally builds into, using the experience and skills that you've built up to apply to just enhance efficiencies for the overall company. So yeah, those are a couple ways that you can kind of get from point A to point B. But every journey looks a little bit different. So yeah.
got it. Yeah. Because like sometimes for people who are taking this unprecedented path, and
Hmm.
it's difficult to see, oh, what will I be in 20 years from now? What are the
Yeah.
KPIs for my career or like growth? Yeah.
Yeah. And even now too, it's like, well, I feel like we're changing again pretty rapidly. So especially with the maybe not horizon, but with like the explosion of artificial intelligence, right? So I think I've even seen some roles out there for construction companies that are like, director of AI. Like, oh my gosh,
Mm,
how is that a role? Like, okay, but it makes sense, right? So it's constantly changing. And if we think about how fast like technology changes, that's, how fast we also have to be able to adopt and adapt, right? So,
got it. Can we dive a bit deeper into EKC? I saw you have
yeah.
services about go to market for startups to some academic curriculum as well. So can you
Mm.
share a bit more?
Yeah, yeah. So with EKC, I do two main things. So one, of course, is support contractors, and then the second major bucket is startups. So for contractors, it really depends on what they are specifically focusing on, but it could be something like helping them figure out overall strategy if they really haven't any experience yet with diving into the tech side. So helping figure out strategy, if they have like a specific tool or I guess process that they're trying to improve, helping them find the right tool on the market to serve their business needs and implement it and train. And then also small requests too. So I've had a very I would say like small contracting business reach out saying like, "Hey, can you just train us up on some Bluebeam?" Like, "Oh yeah, sure." So it varies depending on what the contractor is looking for there. But the general picture is that, not every contractor, like almost no contractors really, are earmarking extra resources and budget for tech and innovation and R&D because it's hard.
Mm,
It's tough to justify, like a whole department or a whole new role because the construction's a lean business, right?
yeah.
So the concept is that okay, well, I've had the experience and skills and expertise. You can have a fractional innovation manager that's experienced to just come in and help give a little bit of extra support there. So without taking a huge demand on resources. And then on the startup side, so that's pretty varied. So I've had a few interesting projects come up there, which it ranges from like helping coach startups on how they're pitching their product to construction teams, helping write case studies for them. My favorite is beta testing and doing product development, and uh, and then of course helping with understanding like a few things with go to market. So yeah, it's really really different on the startup side because startups are um, extremely diverse. Yeah.
I love the whole approach you have taken because, like, I know, like, there are lots of SMBs
Mm.
who don't have dedicated resources and who can really benefit from the tech adoption. And if they find the right ways and
Mm.
work with you, they could provide and make a big difference in their workflows automation. So,
That's the goal, yeah, yeah, and I think you actually touched on it, but I didn't mention it, the educational piece as well,
mm,
so occasionally I'll guest lecture at, different universities on construction tech. There's, I guess, like my webinar series I mentioned, which is aimed at promoting education and awareness, and, I also speak at a bunch of events, so yeah.
I see. And if you were to teach a course, what
Mm.
would for the new civil engineering, what would that be, and what are the core components of that course?
Oh, wow. My brain just exploded because 'cause I'm like, "Oh, there's like 50 I would probably want to do." Um, let's see. So, I guess maybe a few topics I would touch on is, like, innovation culture. So, how to get a good culture of innovation going at, your organization or in your team, or even just for yourself, like changing your mindset. So that would be one. Another one would be tech adoption best practices. So there are a lot of do's and don'ts when it comes to rolling out new solutions. Um, gosh, I could keep going. So like how with strategy too. How do you go from like zero construction tech and innovation to 100? So
Mm,
that would be an interesting one to kind of slowly step through that journey. Um, yeah. So yeah, those are a couple topics.
yeah.
I think you could go deeper and deeper and deeper, but into like each specific type of solution. So there are different like best practices for like a software solution versus a hardware solution versus um, yeah, all sorts of stuff. So yeah.
Interesting. And for I'm curious to know from your experience working with startups and adoption,
Mhm.
what is the pattern you saw of startups who were successful
Mm.
to get their product integrated in construction and startups who struggled? What were some differences?
Yeah. Um, Another big and good topic to unpack. So, some of the good things that happen for ones that are successful, usually they have someone on their team that has a strong construction background and is the one that's communicating to the construction teams. Here's how I would use it, or here's why I'm so motivated to use this tool, and it just translates a little bit better when the um, information is coming from a friendly source, so to speak. So it's industry to industry speaking. And it's also when the solution is actually solving the problem that it's intended to solve, which sounds maybe kind of snarky when I say it, but there are a lot of solutions out there that just fall a little bit short, and you kind of need to check off all of the boxes to really
Mm,
get the traction that you're looking for. So completely nailing, solving the problem that people are having is a big one, because that will change their day in a way that they'll say, okay, I can't really live or do my job without this tool. I'm not going to build another job without this tool. So you get that stickiness because it's been so positively impactful on whatever that they're working with. So those are some of the good things. I would also add on to it ease of use. So I've seen some solutions that have knocked it out of the park with what I've already mentioned, but it was just one too many clicks or too many
mm,
buttons to get there. And teams are going to struggle with that. And especially if you're trying to get something to work in the field, there are so many other issues, right? Like you don't necessarily have Wi-Fi. You almost never have good Wi-Fi. So there's connectivity issues. There's, as soon as you step outside onto the site, you're probably getting bombarded with a whole bunch of questions. So you don't have time to really stand there and say, "Okay, well, it's loading, guys. All right, well, it's loading." Like, that's just not gonna work. So you have to be able to very quickly and easily be able to pull this stuff up and learn it really fast. And sometimes the solutions are just like 1 or 2 clicks too much. And yeah, it's, I like to say like 3 clicks or less is great, or
mm,
taps, depending. Um Otherwise, it's gonna have a slow start. Um, Gosh, what else? So I think, on the flip side, for solutions that are not so successful, some of the, like, pitfalls I'll say that they run into is potentially maybe they do have all of those good things checked off, but it could just be that their first team that used it wasn't a really good fit. So you either had, somebody who didn't want to use the tech in the first place, maybe it's being forced on them, they're
mm,
not super into it. Maybe the project doesn't have a big need for it, so it just sits there unused. So verifying that you have the right people and the right project is also key. So yeah, I've seen good solutions kind of backfire when they don't get the right project fit or the person
mm,
fit, to kind of champion the solution. Um, and what else? Yeah. So I think one other thing as well, and this really depends on the solution, but for solutions that are more broad reaching, let's say like reality capture or like 360, photo video capture platforms are a good example. Pretty much every project can benefit from that. But some solutions are going to be really, really specific. So something like an IoT sensor that's for something super, specific that you're measuring. Maybe it's like seismic activity. Not every project's going to need that. So it also depends on the use case, right? So bigger, wider use case, more opportunities for, value.
yeah. I
Yeah.
really like the inside, like construction project person fit. I haven't never heard that term before, but it's so
Oh,
much
yeah.
relevant. They should like brand it. It's like so much
Yeah.
relevant for our industry.
So I typically I call them innovation champions. So your
Mm,
innovation champion on your job site, that's who's going to be um, kind of the, I guess, cheerleader of the solution. And they're essential because if nobody's saying like, "Hey, check out this tool, like it's great," then nobody's going to really look at it, right? So, yeah, their word of mouth goes a long way in construction. Yeah.
nice. And what are some areas you find the problems are more saturated with, like saturated with a lot of startups, and what are some areas where there's less
Mm.
startup or hardly any startup working?
Yeah. At this point, most areas are pretty saturated, because there's just been such an explosion of solutions. I think probably reality capture is the biggest one. Is that right? Project management, reality capture. There are a lot of project, like general project management solutions out there too. But I'll just pick on reality capture because what's been really interesting is that as our data sophistication has continued to grow, so do the types of reality capture platforms. So, like when we first started out with these types of tools, it was just something that could help you take a better photo, right? And then it turned into, "Hey, we have, 360. Okay, 360." Like, "Oh, hey, well, we can now, link it up to a BIM model." Like, "Oh, okay. Oh, hey, we can actually link this up to a schedule and a BIM model." Like, "Oh, okay. Oh, we can actually link it up to, the it starts getting more and more complex." So, with each of those new, like, I would say, I guess, what am I trying to say? With each new hurdle that we've kind of crossed for technology, it just has expanded the solutions more and more, either through like additional features or and additional solutions. So,
Mm,
so it's kind of a double, I guess, reintroduction of reality capture every time. And that's just one type. Like I'm not even mentioning like scanning services and like a whole bunch of other stuff that kind of falls into that bucket. So yeah. And like drones, for example, will probably fall into reality capture as well. Yeah, yeah.
in areas which are any particular problem which is
Mm,
currently unsolved, or like
yeah, like kind of under uh, utilized or not as many
yeah.
applications. So this is like maybe my personal opinion, but I haven't seen as many solutions that focus on historical knowledge capture
Mm,
for means and methods in the field. So there are many platforms that are tracking historical data, let's say either for like schedule data or like cost history data, et cetera. But nobody's really doing it for how we build. Um,
mm,
so, the classic case is you have a veteran superintendent out on the job who's built a bajillion construction projects and they have it all in their head about what's important and why. And it's only in their heads.
yeah.
So we also have the problem of a bunch of, I guess, of that, veteran tenured experience leaving the industry and having, fresh green professionals come in that don't have that like 30 years of experience. And they also don't have anywhere to go look it up. So, I'm really curious to see how technology can help bridge that gap. I think we are starting to do it in some ways, slowly here and there, either, again, through like historical repositories or something. But really curious to see where like artificial intelligence applications take this problem because it seems like a perfect match with being able to pull quickly like a vast amount of information and then synthesizing it into language that can help somebody else understand quickly and easily. So yeah, I haven't seen too many yet that's focusing on that like knowledge and education piece for means and methods. Yeah.
I must say that's a gem of an idea because, like, I know, like, each construction project you have new learnings, and
Mhm.
like there's a different context, new set of problems, and when you change typology in industry, like somewhere, like, and it's I'm not sure people document their mistakes as efficiently as they document the success. So, and those
Mhm.
mistakes have so much insights. Like, okay, for next project planning, maybe consider this and avoid this kind of planning.
Right. Right. 100%.
Yeah. And so for founders who might be listening to this and who
Mhm.
would like to reach out for your go-to-market
Mm.
services, can you share like how long is the typical program and how can they like?
Yeah. So I mentioned earlier every startup is like super diverse. So it really matters what they're looking for. So some might be looking for, something like an introduction, some might need a whole strategy and plan, some might just need some help with a deck. So it really depends.
Mm,
But the best way to get in touch is just reach out. So quite a few ways to do that. You can email me, Erin at erinconconsulting.com. LinkedIn message is great too. My website has a contact form. So yeah, many ways to get in touch.
I
But
see.
yeah, there's nothing super standardized because it's kind of tough because
Mm,
one size definitely does not fit all for for startups. Yeah.
got it. Yeah, like I was curious on the sense, like we see there are few construction tech focus accelerators, and
Mhm.
uh, after the graduation, startups might have an MVP, one or two pilot partners, and
Mhm.
from that stage, like I haven't seen like a lot of like construction go to market experts like helping them navigate like, okay, yeah, like,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, it's tough. And even from my perspective of like trying to support, it's still tough, right? So, and I know it from having been, on the other side of implementing. So, like some of the challenges that companies are going through is that there's just so much out there. So there's just a sheer
mm,
volume to sort through. So how do you know what's good, what's a good fit, what's not a good fit? Is just step one of like weeding through like literally thousands of solutions that are out there. So that's one part that's super tough, and then you have to hope step two that they're interested and willing to take risk with trying something new. So that whole like process or establishing that process with a company is also a new experience in a lot of cases for them. So yeah, it's I think what startups could possibly keep in mind too is that it could also be a learning curve for the companies that they're working with. So it's almost like doubly hard in construction tech because we're all kind of going through a lot of transformation together. So.
I see. What a few events or conference you highly recommend?
Mm. Yeah, a lot of conferences. I'm trying to think of some of the ones that I've been to this year. So I earlier in the year, I was lucky to be on a panel about artificial intelligence in construction at the Perrin North American Construction Conference. So that was really interesting. That one was different for me as well as an attendee because it was mostly construction legal teams in the
Mm,
room, which usually you don't have the legal presence, but some fascinating perspectives from legal on technology. So I enjoyed that one. Um, Let's see. Usually, ENR Future Tech is another good one, specifically for like finding new tech solutions on the market. Was not able to attend this year, but in the past, I've gone in a few years. What else? Autodesk University's on my radar. I think most of us in the industry probably know about that. Procore Groundbreak is another as well. And then I'll also plug in. So I have had the complete privilege to work with Nate Fuller and Placer Solutions, another consultancy for construction tech, on research reports, specifically about technology and operational excellence in construction. So, with those reports, what Nate has also produced is a virtual summit
Oh,
that synthesizes and the information from the reports as one piece of it, but two also brings in a bunch of the experts that were that we spoke to during the research to bring them to the forefront. So it's a fantastic like one-stop shop to be able to say, okay, I want to dive deep on digital transformation and AI. So that's the one that's coming up next. I believe it is next week, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah,
oh,
next Wednesday. And it's all online, so you can just attend as you like. But yeah, shameless plug for that event. So I'll be moderating one of the tracks there, and super excited to be a part of that event too.
it's amazing. I have a rapid fire round. Uh,
Sure.
but before that, I wanna ask, like, is there anything which we didn't cover in this interview, and you'd like to share your thoughts? Any hot
Mhm.
takes about the industry?
Let's see. So I know I mentioned women in construction tech, so please check them out. Hot takes on the industry. Don't be afraid to try something new. I think a lot of times, and reasonably so, like we fear risk and we fear change because there are safety, like big safety implications that come up in the industry. But it shouldn't hold us back from improving and making things better. So yeah, kind of take that spirit with you because I think it's tough in construction to change, and oftentimes we kind of forget that. Oh yeah, it's actually worth the effort in a lot of cases. So yeah.
Amazing. All right, let's start this round. You'll have a few seconds to answer, and you gotta keep it super brief.
Oh boy. Okay.
uh, any book or video which made a big impact in your life?
Um, immediately I'm like, oh, the Harry Potter series. Yeah, maybe not like a huge impact, but yeah, I like Harry Potter.
I see. Any city in your travel bucket list?
Any city on my travel bucket list? Quite a few. I would like to. I haven't done. I haven't been anywhere in Europe, so like all of Europe. I'd love to do more of a tour of Asia. So I have been to Japan. I would like to go back, but there's just so much more to explore. So kind of everywhere. um, yeah, I haven't traveled that much, so the world.
Mhm. Yes. Your role model?
My role model? Oh, geez. Do I have one? My cat? I don't know. But, no not no yeah, no shade to my cat, but, like, she is tiny and fierce and always shows up. She's consistent. And yeah, she, knows what she wants and she goes for it. So
Yeah. Um, any like construction project that when you see like inspires you or like you have a
Mm.
mad respect?
Um I would say the last one that I was on, so, and I was on this for just a portion of it, but, the Academy Museum of Motion Pictures project, so that's one of the historical renovations that I worked on. It's, in the Miracle Mile area of Los Angeles here, and it's super cool. So it's got the new theater portion, which I think there's some memes or jokes out there that it looks like the Death Star from Star Wars, but it seriously was an incredible feat of engineering and coordination to actually achieve the design. So the geometry is just crazy, and then it's got these like huge I guess, plinths that go like crazy far into the ground with base isolators on them for, earthquake stuff. So that's cool. But the other portion of the building, which I specifically worked on, was the historical reno part with the May Company building. So that involved a whole bunch of, um, a lot of teamwork and close coordination to kind of, renovate that building from, gosh, I wanna say it's 1921 or 23,
Oh,
something super old, maybe older, don't quote me on that. Something super old into the amazing museum space that it is today, so, yeah, that was a really, really cool project, so that one's something I personally worked on, so, yeah. Many other inspiring ones out there, but, the personal
close
connection
to
is
your
pretty
heart.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
3 words your friends would describe you.
Oh, friendly, unique, and I don't know, um, ambitious.
You see, what are what is one thing you're bullish on in construction tech, and one thing you're bearish on construction?
So one thing that like is like a must have for me and one thing that I don't really care too much about. So bullish on tech should be easy. So I don't think we have an adoption problem. I think we just have tech that doesn't fit the market problem. Yeah, it's not that we don't want to change or that people are really stuck. There is some of that, but I think most of us are pretty open to improving. Um, and a lot of times the solutions out there just don't they just don't fit what the actual problem is. So, yeah, that's one thing that I'm kinda stuck on. Like, it should be easy, it should be natural. A lot of times it isn't. And then one thing that's not so important, gosh, good tech does not have to be fancy. So,
Mm,
I kinda it's kind of funny when, sometimes, like, I'll be in a demo or, they'll be running through all these bells and whistles, like, "Oh, look, it can do this feature or that feature," and it's like, "Well, but can it do the one thing that I need it to do?" So you don't always need it to be super fancy. Sometimes fancier is not more impressive, so, yeah.
I see. What is one or two things you learned the hard way? This is the last question.
Ooh. Um, hmm. Um, gosh, I feel like nothing's ever super easy though, which is I'm like, well, everything's kind of fairly challenging. Maybe that's just me not having a super easy time. I don't know. I would say one thing that has repeatedly come back is aligning stakeholders. So uh, everyone from the top executive down to the end user in the field, both of those ends need to be aligned, otherwise you're
Mhm.
not going anywhere. um, so that's something that has repeatedly come up. Yeah.
Amazing. That's a great insight. It was lovely hosting you, Erin.
Yeah.
I am amazed by all the work and all the things you've done in industry, and wish you all the luck for EKC.
Yeah, and thank you for having me on. We're very, happy to be here and really appreciate the opportunity.
All right.